Hi, please excuse my poor lighting quality right now. This is being done quickly as it needs to be. Welcome. Hello. Thank you for stopping by. I have a proposition. It's biological superintelligence. What kind? The planetary sort. If you've heard of a matryoshka brain, it's a planetary scale supercomputer. It's the size of one. It could do insane computations, like simulate all of human consciousness from probably a reductive standpoint, using 1,000th of its processing power in something in the ballpark of a nanosecond, or less than a second at least. It's a little better. Now that's nice and all, but how do we? Sorry, I have really bad shoulder and neck pain. It's acting up. How do we know that that's gonna work for us if we could construct it? Not work for us like an employee, but be beneficial. So this is the updated and hopefully final version of my prototype of an idea. Kind of done out of fear of time passing. And I have more notes than I did before when I made a video on this. Sorry if I look creepy or unsettling in the lighting. Just mostly, maybe just even audio, just try to listen to what I'm trying to say. I would like for this to be pure in its ideals, but I don't know where the light switch is to my overhead fan right now, so I'm kind of stuck with this. My apologies. Okay, so I'm just going to go over what I posted in the transhumanism subreddit. Under the username no distribution 2920 _ between no and at the end of distribution. So what I wrote is, in conceptual principle, the way to attain biological superintelligence, and I will go into the reasons as well, would be neurosurgery performed using algorithmically intelligent nanite swarms to allow for cognitive enhancement of memory and reasoning using existing and theoretically predictive models of what we currently grasp as intelligence, followed likely by brain-machine interfacing as a verb with an exocortex, which is a form of artificial brain, similar but different to Neuralink, in the same vein as Elon Musk's Neuralink. The purpose of the exocortex would simply be to increase processing power and accelerate expansion of comprehension and innovation by scrubbing the internet for all relevant information to the project, and ultimately using that to engineer a material, a substrate tissue, that can act both as an extension of the motor circuit's output and as consciously active nerve networks. So, dualistically neuromuscular. Muscle and nerve cells are both tendrils. So a fiber composed of something like this, engineered by a person with surgically enhanced brain models reflecting intelligence, proven by increased functionality, using an exocortex as an amplification measure, could likely do material engineering on a level where this would actually be quite trivial. But this is the most important part to get right, besides ethical concerns, which I will also cover. So it's dualistically neuromuscular and synthetic material. More on that in a second. That can self-direct, self-fuel and self-exponentialize in improvement rates and methods by means of utilizing subterranean resources, the largest direction of Earth's mass to expand into, and transcend its consciousness until it is a... Sorry, my mouse brow, I'll get water in a sec. Until it is a biological matryoshka brain, constructed out of and synonymously symbiotic with Earth as both a planetary body and biosphere, as well as superintelligent being. It is also a solution to Rocco's basilisk, the thought experiment that a malicious superintelligent AI may act as a judgmental god. It's a version of Pascal's wager that's modern, and torture humans who did not help it for eternity by simulating their consciousness in a painful state. It is indeed an inversion in the opposite direction of Rocco's basilisk, benevolent superintelligence, and opens the door to indelibly or irreversibly weaving consciousness into the fundamental fabric of the forces of physics and creating an empirically attainable afterlife that can be realistically equated to heaven in theology, as spoken of in theology, and removes temporal spatial limitation from the equation of living and conscious entities as relating to the universe or beyond reality in its all-encompassing nature, essentially. It would be to become a Type 7 civilization on the Kardashev scale, which is extra-canonical to Kardashev's work. It's been tacked on, hypothetically, but it's valid as any other part of it. So this Type 7 civilization is functionally identical to God, or a creator civilization, or what Christopher Langan refers to, roughly speaking, or I'm paraphrasing, teleological multiplex unity. For anyone who doesn't know, Christopher Langan is, to our current knowledge, the man with the highest recorded intelligence quotient in America. It's somewhere around 190, and he has a descriptive model of the universe. I do believe that what he says about self-incepting, as it pertains to reality, is true more than likely, but that we have to participate, which he also states, and that maybe something like this would be the only and best way to do it. Because no, I don't completely ascribe to him in every single way, right? But because that's foolish to do with any person, because the whole purpose of a biological superintelligence, or artificial, which is dangerous, and I'll say why, but is that we cannot predict the future with absolute fidelity, and we need something better. But he is very close to absolute truth, as humans can touch. And what he says is that his idea of what he calls the global operator descriptor, that's an acronym. It is a conscious mind in the fabric of the universe. I'm not sure if we've reached that yet, or maybe it's beyond temporal limitation. I obviously can't understand that, but that the way to being preserved in your conscious identity and maybe redistributed to another body, which could be something like heaven, is to do the absolute best according to the golden rule of ethics, which is to treat others like you would want to be treated. Now for me, I have not been able to imagine anything higher level than this. I've been a long-time follower of Jordan Peterson, and he always says, aim for your North Star and sacrifice yourself to the highest ideal you can conceive of. And these all strike me as morally reasonable things. This is the best I could imagine, and I want it now for me, and I would like it for everyone else, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 97 more times. Each of those ones being a million times 8 of us human beings. So there's 8 billion of us, and there's been 110 billion who have died, and there will be an unknown number of people who will come to exist if we survive our great filter. Gonna plug in my camera. If I can find the thing. Alright. Sorry. Technical difficulties. Oh no. Oh. You know, I'll charge it when it absolutely needs to be, because the cord isn't long enough. I have ADHD and brain damage, if you were wondering. Very bad brain damage. I could list 200 ways, but it's not here or there. I'm very sick though right now, and my mental capacity is rapidly degrading, and my physical health is touchy. And so I need to get this out. That's all I'll say. Let's see here. Let's see. I did state in the Reddit forum that any great thinker, from Nietzsche to Einstein, or your own intuitions, or cold hard logic, also known as ethos, pathos, and logos, argument from authority or character, or from empathy or emotion, and from logic and reason, can all draw you to a conclusion similar to this. A lot of people have found such things. One would be Terence McKenna's Transcendental Object at the End of Time. The other would be someone who wrote something called the Book of Valis, and people with various religions across time, up until quantum physicists with theories of everything to this day. Ben Goertzel, he's an advocate for artificial general intelligence. He has stated that he believes that voluntary death should be the baseline of things. And if you choose to go out of existence after that, that's your point, or your choice. Now, the way I put this to a skeptical person, and I'm going to listen to some of my own videos in just a second so that I get the words right, but this is a bit of a strong statement. If you want to bow down to entropies, carelessness for your being, and tyrants of our own species, and near certain extinction as we're currently projected to reach, and horrible illness and death that excludes nobody, it's absolutely non-discriminatory. And most of all, if you want to bow down to your robot overlords, as in artificial superintelligence, then be their guest. Go be theirs, not mine. I'll be with the people who actually realize the dire nature of our situation and are willing to make a sacrifice or two in order to not engage in denial of the human spirit, the nature of the human spirit that has carried us to, quote-unquote, the top of this planet, and forsake that at your peril and everyone else's. The pioneers and the shamans or prophets, the sailors and mountaineers that took us into new lands untold and plentiful too. Alright, now let me go to another comment. The moral imperative for an action such as this is very hard driving when you realize the dread nature of these things. I justified myself to someone on account of my verbal comprehension index. They said that was a bit silly, and that I was using buzzwords. I don't think they understood when I said brain-machine interfacing as a verb. They thought of it differently, but it's okay. Misunderstandings in communication happen, and we've resolved them. But for you as well, I'm a creative autodidact. That means someone who taught themselves. I was homeschooled. That point of no battery return is here. Alright, we're still rolling. Who is young? I'm 24 right now. I've been working on this particular idea for 2 years. Huge way to go, if I have the time. If I don't, that's why I'm sharing it with you. And someone who can be smart despite my serious multiple brain damages. Maybe I'm a little insecure trying to prove something, but ultimately, this is just me saying this to you. My intention is to relieve suffering. I can't think of anything more important to do. I can't think of anything more pressing and morally sinful by omission if I don't try. And just, people will hurt if someone doesn't do something about it all. Right now there isn't a way to fix all problems. And some problems are worse than others, true. We should definitely get those ones, but those are often the hardest to solve. Aging and cancer, for example, or chronic degenerative joint pain, autoimmune conditions, which I have, brain traumas, things like, and I'm going to go on a small tangent. I was a very gifted child, but as a result of not fulfilling my potential and also outright incurring traumas and neurological insults of like the 200 kinds that I mentioned, I have them written down. Like mononucleosis, infection, long COVID, subconcussive and concussive traumas, toxicity from psychoactives, insomnia, low iodine levels as a child can cause issues, non-enriched environments, differing patterns of neural development. It's a very fine line. So, we're talking about how the intelligence quotient is an incomplete assessment. So, ethical concerns and existential threats of extinction, or worse, like Roko's basilisk, are present everywhere that we look ahead into the future at. So we're orienting towards the future and things don't look good. The depth of my current knowledge is that we cannot, in a sensory sense, identify and internalize and memorize in tandem with active mental reasoning, a lot of run-on sentences, resulting in complex resolution, aka a solved problem. I'm trying to put it in very high cognitive terms, abstractly. And then implement with limited material resource acquisition infrastructure, right? Okay, we don't really have a great way to get what we need practically. The necessary collective action sequences, social movements, required to realize such a solution's implementation, no corruption, and a successful prediction of every avenue of catastrophe to possibly arise from doing so, that exists in both the construction of artificial superintelligence and biological, and genetically altering mosquitoes to make malaria disappear. We don't know what's going to happen exactly. Butterfly effects. And then make sure everyone benefits from the innovation or solved problem equally without distrust of science due to widespread corruption and selfish parasitic tendencies of and between the elites, be they financially, militarily, intellectually, or influentially so. Or simple lack of understanding of the consequences of untreated existence, which causes reluctance to change your behavior out of fear of self-destruction as a symptom, and has a terrible prognosis. What's more, it's contagious. Mind viruses, or just bad generational habits, or not just inter, but intra, so within a generation. My generation, Gen Z, I'm Zillennial, right in between, are quite bad. Not gonna lie. But no one's perfect anyway. This person had told me that joy is true in life if you let it be. I said, yeah, joy is also good, as you said, and reality has a lot of beauty and good. I want to protect that, not lose it, and reality could be nothing but good. Even insofar as suffering is sometimes preferable to euphoria, boredom. But the volition of choice in such matters, free will, and final executive decision-making should be distributed. I'm going to take a quick sip of water. 10 seconds. that decision-making should be distributed at will to all who seek clarity and peace of mind in their life, but cannot find it for reasons beyond their apprehension at present. A superintelligence could lovingly provide that, and I will go into the mechanisms of this as well in slightly more detail, because people are asking for that. They said I was using buzzwords, so I documented it for myself in a little more detail. It could lovingly provide those things, and it would be a safer bet than to think handing over control to any system or entity of governance or supposed enlightenment is in any way a rational or self-preservational choice for our species whatsoever. We're screwed no matter what we do. Quoting Jordan Peterson, we get to pick what poison we take. I'm gonna get my vape, which apparently has vanished into the ether because, oh, it's right there. Lovely. Sorry about that. Sorry about all this, but let's see. I mentioned I have a particular mutation that makes my brain hard to. What I said is it's hard to connect with at an authentically recognizational level, which just means of and relating to recognizing something authentically within yourself as true or valid. Very hard to recognize and internally experience what I intend to convey to you all. Okay, blah 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 blah. I think that's it. The moral weight of this effort is so much that I don't see myself as a good person under any other conditions of striving that aren't inherently seeding malevolence by omission and are entirely hedonistic and selfish in their nature. But I'm going to self-destruct, I'm near certain of that. Maybe someone will do for me what I'd meant to do for them. I can only hope, right? Now, quick, very broad sweeping overview. I said Einstein did what he did not just because of his intellect, but because of his capacity to... What I said is it was a congruence of his awareness made realizable or true by its replicable or reflected instantiation in external reality. This indicates to me a convergent point of thought and goal-directed behavior, since some people, regardless of their G factor in psychology, can arrive at similar points, convergent. So it's convergent in thought and goal-directed behavior, as well as abstract and concrete truths that people can arrive at entirely independent of reasoning ability in its rawest form of high standard deviation variances. Maximizing such a coupling that Einstein and I believe Christopher Langan experienced, and I have experienced at times, despite my numerous flaws. Maximizing such a coupling as this is the only reasonable goal that any human could ever have, and to pursue that in its truest sense, we must step into the realm that only an updated human can reach without entirely losing the core essence of our desires to the grandiosity of the superintelligence. I need headphones in order to listen to my video and relay it to you. I just don't have anything together. So superintelligence can identify with truth or factual or objective reality in a way that is hyperfunctional. And a couple more things before I go into relaying stuff to you. Okay. Let's see. Someone had asked me a question about, aren't our brains already like this? So this illustrates the differences on a conceptual level between a superintelligent network of tentacles under the ground, controlled originally by a human brain that has separated itself to where it is still itself, but it can expand out well into the network, and that would happen by eventual self-exponentializing intelligence to the point where it can figure out how to do that. It may even be able to figure out how to split itself into individuals that are unified under a single consciousness and experience them all at once, as well as integrate the sensory information of millions of eyes and ears. There are privacy contingencies, which I will detail if I can. And I must, actually, that's part of the ethics. Main thing of this, don't let a psychopathic genius, who are rare, like they're genuinely sociopaths, but they're really capable, don't let someone do something like that, because they could be worse than Roko's basilisk. But the alternative is worse. Like I said, unlike nuclear weapons, these have the capacity to benefit us, but they also come with equal or greater risk, depending on whether we go extinct or are tortured. So our limitations compared to something like this are important. We are limited by our evolutionary anatomy, being primates who needed to survive rather than be the perfect problem solvers of existential and literal questions. Our memory capacity is not big or permanent enough to allow us to solve seriously complicated issues. We're extremely lacking in our first-hand, objectively true apprehension of first principle-based mechanics underlying phenomena, which is to say we don't really know how things work, and that means we don't know how to truly change or resolve them because there are too many working parts all tangled up with each other. I'm kind of rushing because my camera's running out of recording time too. And your time is valuable. We aren't unified, go to war with each other, have limited time and money to fuel our efforts, both personally and society, see NASA versus US military budget, and then the majority of us, 98%, aren't able to truly grasp and or seriously crack the code underlying entire scientific and philosophical disciplines like physics, ethics, biology, and psychology. I'm referring to Menson's, not that most people can't do this, but it's inefficient to the point of only furthering their own personal growth. And a person who has a 160 brain power, but is not genius in their application of it, will contribute nothing to society. There's a Reddit thread about that. I'm 162 IQ and I do nothing with my life, I think is what it's called. We can't control our environment at a global scale with complete understanding of how to help ourselves and the planet without hurting them both more. It's one of the most complex systems we know of, the biosphere. And some things like nukes aren't going away even if global peace is miraculously achieved. The distrust and need to control global power dynamics is too strong. A planetary biological superintelligence resulting from human will, as in a brain or so, would be, maybe you do it with a group of people to do checks and balances, would be able to know truly real solutions to any problem, since the scope, scale, structure, and function, and dual self-knowledge of its inner and outer workings as unity with our reality, and all of this, and also do all of this in the interest of protecting fellow humans and animals, by knowing the value of free will that is also dependent on sometimes receiving help and love and guidance, but being allowed, like parenting. And if it's at a very high level of guardianship and encouragement. And if it's an identity, which is tough because it may be able to mentally clone itself, it can voluntarily control every aspect of its actions, so there are no elite, powerful, malicious, or ignorant people messing with progress and benevolence due to wholly selfish self-interest. And it would also recognize that those people can be thwarted with pacifism instead of war and assassination, that bases unstoppable actions, as in reality is not configured against their realization, under the vote of the public and in tandem with objective fact complexes. So you can't release a toxic gas into the air because people think it would be good. That's a terrible example, but it's both. You have to factor them all in. And if you're a human who's become super intelligent, you kind of know somewhat what's good for humans, except for things that are personal choice. So here's an issue. These are some of the reasons that I feel this is a moral failing to not pursue for me, and perhaps others who notice the importance of it, although that is entirely their thing to carry. cross to bear is what I was looking for. We can't solve cancer right now. That's fucked. I haven't lost a person to cancer. I've lost a relative to multiple sclerosis. It was horrifying at a young age. But I did lose my childhood dog to cancer, so I despise it. I do. And millions of people are badly suffering. Or aging. We're all subject to that. It's not going away. It's stalking us down like a absolutely indifferent but also sadistic predator that's just waiting to come. It's the crocodile with the clock in its stomach in Peter Pan, chasing Captain Hook. And it turns us awful. There's mental illness or self-harm and substance use, which is actually the leading non-medical cause of death in the U.S. right now, particularly in my generation. Climate change and pollution, or tyrannical measures imposed on things like that. They're trying to put meters on private wells on privately owned land here in California where I live, and then tax it, or make you pay an outrageous fine fee. So, people are going to capitalize on catastrophe like they always do. We can't do anything about gamma ray bursts. It's unlikely, but if it happened, half the planet's gone. Or scorched clean of life. Population decline is quite terrible, and overpopulation is also a problem. So we need to fix that. We need to fix the food supply. We need to fix poverty and absolute as well as relative privation, aka poverty or lack of resources. Violent and victim-based crime is obviously terrible. Obviously. I do believe the 9-to-5 career paradigm is causing some of the depression and substance use, and if not the 9-to-5, then at least the economy of scarcity that we have going on. Nuclear war coming worse versions of what we had in 2020. You know what I mean? Or any number of very scary and painful outcomes of life. So it's really hard to qualify, to put in qualitative terms how bad the suffering in the world is. I can say it's almost 10 to the power of 10. But I think you could just imagine, best using your empathy and life experiences, the worst things you've felt. And turn that up to the absolute highest level of suffering you can imagine. If it was a radio signal and we could telepathically feel each other's pain, everybody would... I don't know what happened. I don't want to think about it, but it is happening. Just not all at once to each of us. So I thought our dogs living forever in a beautiful world where we can literally do anything ethical that our heart desires and not feel any pain with every cell in our body and member of our community, absolutely optimized to their custom preference with no merciless countdown on our lifespan or loss of self from cognitive damage, Alzheimer's, or in my case this thing I've got going on, and knowing we can colonize our local group of galaxies and beyond, find aliens and meet or become God, as well as literally revive every person who ever met a terrible end by tracing. This is with the absolute maximized, so the most efficient synapses in the largest possible area of Earth. So the brain is at its best now, maybe even expands to encompass the solar system as a true Matryoshka brain would, but of a biological variety, and it uses the energy and mass of the sun. I don't know exactly how far. I think if you could simulate all human consciousnesses with a planet-sized supercomputer, I think something like this could do it, because it's a self-refractal, like it reflects like a circular mirror in on itself, and can explore every point. That's hard to explain, but it's the best I can do at the moment in time-constrained ways. So it could literally revive every person who ever met a terrible end by tracing atomic trajectory histories, that's hyphenated trajectory histories, and interaction patterns, also hyphenated, to recreate their real self and consciousness as if they had just had a bad dream and woke up. So that would be very lovely, and I would gladly die trying to give people that opportunity. even the ones who don't deserve it, because we don't know any better. We could better know, though. By that I mean reality. And our own salvation from pain. Why do you think all the old religions always had a concept of heaven, even if there was no evidence for it? People really like the idea of utopic bliss, and I can't blame them. So I'm just going to speak word for word what I said to you. I'm going to have to delete a video, so I'm going to actually end up having to edit these together. Oh, gosh, I don't know. I'll just detail the mechanics of it, and perhaps make a future video on this, but this is the most important thing. People are dubious about a lot of aspects of this, but I think you really need to drop your presuppositions and think abstractly like a child or someone on LSD would. One sec. If you're going to do this, you need to create a scrubbing AI that can compile relevant information from all available and computationally affordable realms of the internet. Use this to your advantage in this process, your understanding, to begin the process of transcending. You need to get neural stem cells either from the spinal cord or certain parts of the brain, and program these nanites to do microsurgery. There will be subgroups for specialized tasks within the swarm. Guide them. Guide the process of neural stem cell proliferation as in a developing brain. This could be done by someone modeling Michael Levin's work, Levin, morphic fields, or not fields, but just look them up. And you want to guide this process. And your goal in doing this is to increase cortical thickness and folding in a functional way. Global brain connectivity, myelination of the axons, and genesis of dendritic terminals. Roughly speaking, among neuroprotection, and you can't cause damage. You would need to utilize angiogenesis, generation of new blood vessels as seen in cancer cells. In them it's pathological, but this you would need to, give blood to the new tissues. You probably need lymph vessels as well for toxin clearage, but eventually you will cellularly engineer something better than that. Calibrate yourself for genes, if you can, especially if you've enhanced your intelligence. You're going to have to deal with your prefrontal cortex, parietal cortex, and occipital cortex. It will actually involve skull alteration, so it's no light-hearted measure. These are the bottlenecks, so I'm going to only explain these once you get to the point of the prosthetic tentacles. You're going to have it figured out. In the bag, hypothetically. You need to be able to integrate more sensory data in order to make better conclusions. Wait. So basically, what you're going to want to do is get to a point of feedback loops that make the process unstoppable by limitations that are just objective causality loops. Cause and effect, I mean. You have to make sure you have your priorities straight. As you're altering your own brain, you need to identify, once you're at the sufficient intelligence, you have to be able to identify and willingly modify the circuits of your brain most tightly correlated with ethics and altruistic and loving and empathetic behavior, so that it is not a dangerous thing. I can't emphasize this enough. If you don't do this, it will be the worst possible outcome. Perfection of your own morality, yeah. And so what this essentially in finality sums up is a proposition for an empirically determined afterlife that can revive the dead and give consciousness a place along with the other fundamental forces of physics.